This calculated values tutorial will explore the procedures you need to follow to simplify expressions in your control system. These concepts are a little more advanced than anything we have shown this far, but don't be discouraged if this information doesn't come easily. You don't need to use calculated values in your system to be successful. We only recommend this approach if you need to simplify a complex system into something more manageable. And we also have more documentation on this in the Help Center if you wish to explore it in more detail. With the developer running and a project open, select the Calculated Values window in the Project Data section. The Calculated Values interface allows you to simplify complex expressions into smaller expressions that are more manageable. We can do this by creating new internal indications that represent the sum of other indications. And we can use those sums in other expressions. You will find great value in this feature for representing power flows, water distribution, or for any process where many pathways are involved. And this summary method is also very useful in cases where icons in the upstream processes can impact many icons downstream. The product ships with one sample calculated value. This is used to control power flow on the sample screen. The internal value is called Power Calc. We will eventually delete the sample calculated value. It's only included as an example. But before we do, go to the breakers on the sample screen after you watch this video to understand how that power flow is engineered using this single calculated value. For this tutorial, we have added a number of new calculated values to show you how we simplify power flow on the shipping screen. Like alarms, calculated values are indications. You can use them in other calculated values in alarms and in any graphic icon you choose. Go to the Project Data section and filter the type to see the new values. Let's navigate to the shipping screen and look at how we have assigned the breaker icons. Here on the shipping screen, we show both AC and DC breakers. These breakers will eventually power the pumps that push the liquid product over and down into the waiting trucks on the factory floor below. These breakers all represent two states, either red for closed and energized, or green for open and de-energized. When a breaker is closed, power flows towards the pumps below. Displaying the color of breakers as either open or closed is relatively easy using normal expressions. We simply observe and open and close indications and substitute the picture of the image appropriately based on which of the two indications are high. We will now examine the expressions on the breakers to clarify. But all the power lines between the breakers are a little tricky. To decide what color to paint the lines, you need to follow the state of all the breakers in line from the AC breakers at the top all the way down to the pumps. And there are many pathways that power can take depending on which breakers are closed. Fortunately, there is a simple way to create the expressions for these lines. We will use calculated values and simplify the expressions by grouping the pathways into smaller sections. We will display a picture to show how we intend to break up this flow. In this drawing, we intend to simplify the downstream icon expressions, and we do that by grouping the flows. The two gray lines are straightforward. If the two breakers above them are closed, then these lines will be red. For the first group, if the AC1 is closed and D1 is closed, then the pathways beyond D1 are energized. We will call this calculated value AC1_power. We have essentially grouped these two breakers together into this single indication. For the second group, if AC2 is closed and D2 is closed, then the pathways beyond D2 are energized. We will call this calculated value AC2_power. And finally, the third grouping relies on four pathways. We will call this grouping bus power. We will open the calculated values window and walk through the logic of how power would reach the bus power through the four distinct pathways. For the first of the four pathways, if AC1_power is true and D3 is closed, D2 is closed, and D9 is closed, then bus power is energized. The expression would be true, and processing of this expression stops. However, if false, processing continues. In the second rule, if AC2 underscore power is true, and D3 is closed, D1 is closed, and D8 is closed, then bus power is energized. These first two groupings were the two crossing routes. The other two routes are simpler. If AC1 underscore power is true and D8 is closed, then bus power is energized. Or if AC2 underscore power is true and D9 is closed, then bus power is energized. We are defining all of these combinations in one place rather than assigning all of these combinations to every line icon downstream. Let's go back to our shipping screen and look at the breakers again. Now all the lines below D8 and D9 don't have to look at everything above it. All they need to paint themselves red is to look at the single calculated value, bus power. And pump 1 power only has to look at bus power and D4 closed to determine if power is available at that pump. Before we run the HMI station and set our breakers with a running PLC and then watch the corresponding flows of electricity, let's take a look at how the expressions are set in the shipping screen with these calculated values. To speed things up, we will use the F2 function key to show the expressions for each icon. We will now run the HMI station and the communications server and the logic server to see how our assignments work. Should you need to see the value of your calculated values on the HMI station, then you can open the I/O tabular screen and filter to the calculated type. This concludes our introductory tutorial on calculated values. By using this tool to summarize groups of indications into a single indication, we can simplify expressions in all the icons downstream from the initial process. Be sure to read the sections on both expressions and calculated values in the Help Center documentation. This section will give you a deeper perspective of the power and flexibility you can have with these tools.